Sorry, just announcing that we're recording and we're gonna do our broadcast piece as well, which means we might get, I think, we'll have one or two folks that patch it in that way, so. We're not live.
Who do we have for?
So, you know, so I think we have.
So Dave and. She just mentioned Holly. I was like. Don't you want that? You and.
That's what we have right now. Oh, sorry, so that's just Sarah and myself.
Well.
All right, let's get started. Do we have any public comments?
Doesn't look like we have anybody in the room.
No, and just raise your hand, anyone online. If there's any comments. Approval of the September committee meeting minutes. I
Oh,
sent
sorry.
those out. Any comments on those meeting minutes? Any issues? Sarah? I don't see any.
Okay,
Listed.
I have to comment that I thought they were incredibly detailed and very well done. And are we now having like AI do a summary on Zoom?
That would be a question for Sarah. I was.
Because otherwise, Sarah, I was like, wow, you took a lot of great notes.
yeah, no, I did use AI for a summary last time.
Nice work.
And then we read them over.
Nice work. Yeah.
So they are accurate. Who could be the note taker today? Is
I
Sarah-
can,
Thank you for.
but I can't see who all is there, so when we do introductions for Kelsey, I'll get everybody's name, otherwise can you just tell me who's there?
Okay, or wow, sorry, we should have done a roll call then. I'm just gonna name them then. Barry, Julia, Andy, myself. Kim Turner is here. Kelsey's here. Joe, Barb. And then online, I know we have Ellie Baker. And shoot, who else?
Dave.
And Dave. Hi, Dave.
Can we just focus?
I know how to.
Can you just
Or is it us?
It was a little out of focus.
Yeah.
But it might not.
Where'd Andy go?
Yeah.
Andy's Mr. AV.
I think, is there not right above the lens?
Projector focus?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
Right,
this
that's like
is down, I know
old
that. Did I guess it's one? Yeah, and he could
Still do it.
for us for some.
Not gonna work right, but,
There, that's better.
okay.
Yeah.
Well done.
Well, first, I'd like to welcome Kelsey. Hi. The new environmental planner and planning department.
Welcome.
Thank you. This is the resiliency committee, as you must know. Do you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself?
No, not at all. So I just started last week in this position. I moved to Newburyport this year in June. So you know, been here a few months. So previously was on the seacoast of New Hampshire. My job immediately prior to this was working as a drinking water inspector for EPA Region 1 and a pesticide inspector. So I have regulatory enforcement compliance background, but getting up to speed on wetlands. Wondering now. Great to meet everybody.
And I understand you'll be participating in the committee and these meetings?
Yes,
going
yeah.
forward? That's great news. Andy, did you have anything else? or-
No, we're just very happy to have Kelsey here. It was a little bit gap in between and I know it's big shoes to fill, but we're very happy also to have Julie be able to help with the transition, so.
Yeah.
And to have Julie on with me.
Awesome. So a number of us were in the meeting right before this with the water supply ad hoc committee, but Connie, do you want to give a quick recap of that?
Literally.
I think we had met once for last month's meeting, so just that.
Oh, we didn't, okay, sure. So we literally just met moments ago, but we also met 2 weeks ago at the meeting 2 weeks ago. We really focused on the Indian Hill project. We really didn't get to, you know, I don't want to talk about it in the sort of contextual phases. So there's a number of elements that need to be done there. There's the pump station, which is currently funded in the CIP. And so, that is moving forward. But we had sort of a technical discussion about, what that pump is and what's the change would be there. Then there is the element of the dam at the lower Artichoke to protect both the lower and the upper Artichoke from a backwater event, as well as the submerged pipeline from the upper Artichoke to the lower Artichoke. So we really got through those three elements in our first meeting. And there was a lot of discussion about the different elements. I think where we probably landed, where a lot of the discussion really settled, no official decisions have been made in any capacity for any of the phasing of the projects at this point, but was a lot of discussion around the dam itself. And, essentially a move away from any discussion about building a dam that would also raise the water levels. Not that it wouldn't be a super ideal thing to have raised water levels in the lower Artichoke. However, the permitting issues around that would really probably extend it into such a timeline that we would be at such a risk to our drinking water source that it probably isn't feasible. So there was a lot of discussion really about creating, I'm going to call this a gate dam. That's probably not the right word, but essentially a gate at the bottom of the lower Artichoke that we could raise and lower in the event of a storm surge or a backwater event. And the team seemed to really coalesce around that particular idea. The one wrinkle, I guess I'll call it, that I was not aware of until it came up in the meeting is that evidently West Newbury's wells, is that the proper term for it? Their wells essentially sit immediately outside of where we would essentially be putting that dam. And so in the event that we put that dam in place or that gate in place, essentially we would be exacerbating the flooding of their wells because we would be, not allowing water to pump it over. And so, certainly West Newbury would like to be a part of a discussion about that. And while the gate would be entirely on Newburyport property, at the end of the day, we would need West Newbury's Concom to buy into that. And it would seem very unlikely that they would buy into that because of the impact that it would have on their wells. So that's certainly something we need to be thinking about as we look at the design of that and potentially having to work with West Newbury to have a dam that would protect the lower Artichoke and by default the upper Artichoke, but also something that would protect their wells. We also discussed the submerged water line from the upper Artichoke to the lower Artichoke. I think, a lot of the concerns that have been brought forward around it do seem less of a concern, if I can say that, if we put the dam in place. So things like, the dam, essentially being completely compromised and the sacrifice of the lower Artichoke and now having, an exposed pipe and all those sorts of things. If we are to protect the lower Artichoke, I feel like the team seems to be coalescing around the fact that that submerged water line from the upper Artichoke to the lower Artichoke makes a lot of sense. We did not in that particular meeting get to the pipeline from the Indian Hill Reservoir down to the upper Artichoke. So that is something that we still need to discuss. We had hoped that that would bleed over into today's discussion. However, the city engineer is out right now. And so instead we pivoted in today's discussion to really focus on a discussion around the the water treatment plant. And so I think there's really three elements there. There's the upgrade to the existing plant to bring us into compliance for most notably PFAS regulations from the federal government, which are now have been upgraded to be implemented by 2031. Then there is, which is a change from 2028. So in previous discussions and what is in the CIP is really an upgrade to our existing facility to be able to meet the 2028 regulation. So now that that's being updated to 2021 or 2031, the discussion has really expanded into the fact that the facility as it sits today is around 40 years old, very much approaching the existing water treatment facility is very much approaching the end of its useful life. It has, you know, we don't have a lot of redundancy in the plant, and, you know, there's a lot of discussion about the fact that, you know, all maintenance really has to happen in the winters because, you know, we can't take anything offline and still meet our demand in the summertime. So, you know, there are just a lot of complications, I guess is the easiest way to say it. With the existing facility, there's a lot of reasons to look at upgrading that particular facility instead of doing a $23.5 million upgrade to a very old facility. Does it make more sense to essentially build a new facility for about $60-ish million that would incorporate, you know, redundancy, higher capacity, these upgrades for PFAS and all of those issues. So there was a discussion about that. Again, no decisions about prioritization have happened yet, but just a conversation about that. We also had a relatively short conversation about whether or not we would want to consider a reverse osmosis plant. And essentially the pros and cons of that, you know, the pros being that we could ostensibly take water from the Merrimack, which would eliminate the need for all of the reservoirs, Indian Hill, all of those, the other pieces of the puzzle, which are not insignificant costs as well. But the cons to it are that it's a very high energy utilization for reverse osmosis. It produces a lot of byproduct that can be very complicated to get rid of, and it would be even more expensive. So while there are certainly some pros, there are certainly cons that go along with it. So did I miss any elements that we discussed for those of you that are also there?
Can I just
That
ask?
was a very good weekend.
Yeah, sure.
So the other thing with the reverse osmosis, it would be 5 to 10 years in permitting.
That's-
So a
yeah.
lot of these other issues would still not be going away while we were waiting to get the permitting, not to mention the design and
No.
construction of the RO systems. That was another thing. Correct me if I'm wrong, with the dam discussion, now that we've decided not to raise the water level, the conversation came up about the wells in West Newbury to protect, we want to protect those wells as well, but my understanding is that instead of wrapping around the base of the lower artichoke, we could essentially straighten, when we get to the head of the lower artichoke, we could more or less run along 113 in order to also protect the wells in West Newbury, which could be a win for both Newburyport and Newbury, thereby kind of strengthening our ability to negotiate with West Newbury to get a solution that was, you know,
Yeah, I think
helpful
you're right.
to community.
I want to put one caveat on that. We did not make any decisions because the community does not get to make any
Yeah.
decisions.
But
I feel like we're coalescing
yeah,
around
the
that
city
idea.
engineer did mention that, and I know that the town administrator from West Newbury was there and also brought up that item.
Yeah, but I would agree. My understanding is that we could essentially, you know, have the dam come further across. We'd still only need the gate where the gate was proposed,
Yeah.
but that we could build essentially an earthen dam across that would protect their wells. There'd be
And that-
incurred more costs, but I would imagine West Newbury would
And the
understand that they would.
topography works for that? Does
Well, I
John
remember
Eric-
I
it
would
being,
wish John
it
Eric was
goes
here, but
through
that's.
wetlands. And so I guess there's additional permitting doing that, but it also, you know, so there's an issue, but it also shortens our dam, I believe,
It
so
does.
construction costs would be
Lower.
It shortens our dam
because it sort of just drives it, I think, to Muscogee.
rather than wrapping it
Rather
up
than wrapping it,
around
would
the
go
reservoir. It just
Yeah.
goes
And my
straight.
understanding is that the topography is such that it could die into an elevated
Yeah.
hillside.
And to, because I get you saying what shortens the dam.
Yeah.
I think what that means more is the improvements that we need to make to the dam around
Mhm.
because of the fact that, you know, it has deterioration to the edge of the dam as it exists today.
Yeah.
We would probably not need to do
Right.
those things because we'd be coming across. That's my
Right.
understanding, but I wish John Eric were here to
Yeah, no,
answer
that's
that.
interesting, yeah.
But again, we would certainly need to be working with West Newbury to,
Still would need a lot of permitting for
for sure.
Refilling a lot of wetlands in there with the dam.
Yeah,
Well.
Those are, we created those wetlands by damming the artichoke. Does that make a difference when we're doing twice?
No, sorry, what's the question? That's what you said, Barry?
No, so it's great. Well,
We created the wetlands.
we created the
And
wetland.
so would that make it any easier? And
yeah.
Julia's opinion is, no.
Well, then perhaps we could have a compensatory created wetland someplace else in the system.
We'd have to.
Yeah.
I think he was talking, John Ive was talking about that, and there's not gonna be, because if you go like straight across there.
Yeah, Andy, can you
That's a
just
lot
look
of
at where
fill.
the wells are? For
Yeah,
both the
where
people
are the wells?
online as well as. us?
Yeah, he's talking about the other side of the line.
Well,
On the West Newbury side, where are there?
yeah,
wells?
where are their
I
wells?
think they're all in there.
Access project. Yeah.
They're fairly close to the reservoir.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my impression in the
Yeah.
discussion is that they're very close to the water. line.
There.
Yeah.
And so I think if I was, I'm gonna get out just, and anyone there, please correct me if I'm wrong, so we do not want to disseminate incorrect information. But I believe the wells, I've been, because I've seen it.
That was
They're
my
right around
impression.
there.
Aren't the
And so
well-
This is the dam.
I thought they were a little further toward one
Isn't that facility
seventeen.
right there next to Andy's hand there, that's the well pump station and everything, I believe.
But the wells
We're talking
themselves,
West
right?
Newbury
are-
wells.
And what-
That's the West,
Well,
no, that's what I'm talking about.
I thought they
Yeah,
were closer to
Driven this
117,
way,
but
from what I
yeah,
understood.
exactly.
And that, and therefore protecting their wells that are in this vicinity.
Are these deep wells and, is
That I don't-
for the
I don't know.
things? coming
I know,
from-
that's what I'm wondering, is it deep in an aquifer or is it like more
Yeah.
I
water
have no
table?
Yeah,
kind of?
but we know we have the info, but I
Yeah.
don't know.
John Eric, and just, one thing to add is, Angus Jennings, the town manager for West Newbury, has been attending the meetings. He couldn't come today because of pressing business over there. But we do, one of our scheduled meetings is to specifically talk about the IMA and the issues as he sees it, not only around this, but also from bringing the water line from Indian Hill down. You know, there's lots of things that impact, West Newbury, so
Yeah,
we really need to be
and.
having that discussion with her.
I would guess that West Newbury would want to do something to start protecting those wells.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yes,
And so this might be a great partnership regardless of what.
yes, exactly. But it's, you know, more and more and more, at least I am realizing how much West Newbury is integral to all of us. That
Yeah.
there's nothing here that we can really be
Yeah.
doing without them.
We're stealing all the water.
Yeah. Without, other than the water treatment facility, so today's discussion, you know, we can probably do that without asking, but everything else really involves them pretty heavily.
Connie, can I ask you a question about the treatment plant?
Sure,
Um,
maybe I can answer.
I heard just the tail end of that conversation, about, a carbon bed as opposed to an activated carbon bed. Was there discussion of an activated carbon system? Because that's what we looked at when we first converted the system over from these incredibly Byzantine old paper charts and stuff that they used to cut out of his circles and pin to the meters.
I was of the impression that all the time that we were talking about carbon, we were talking about activated carbon.
Yes.
No, that's not what he said at the end, though. I just was in on the tail end. That's why.
well, I think I remember him mentioning it was very expensive to swap these things out, like hundreds of thousands of dollars if we did
Yeah.
like a wholesale swap.
Yeah,
Well,
that
I
was before Barry.
that was
I think
the-
you caught a question on why we can't build, or dig deeper
Yes.
in
Yeah,
order
that's
to
right.
accommodate more sedimentation or something. And that discussion, it might have reflected an older system, I'm not sure, but
Okay.
everything that we were talking about
Was
in
activated carbon.
substance was.
Yeah,
gonna be
and they can
activated.
rust it, yeah.
Yeah, so the upgrade would be activated carbon, a new facility would have activated
Right.
carbon. The discussion I think you heard, I think James Ray, is why couldn't we just dig deeper and evidently the boxes, when I say
They
box,
talked
I don't
about-
even know what that means, but the box that we
About rusting
currently
it,
use
the
isn't
fluorine
deep
out.
enough.
That's easy.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
gravity fed thing, so everything comes down through it, you gotta move all the pipes below, you gotta blow out the bottom of it,
Got it, got it.
and then you lose
But no, yeah,
pressure.
there was a question about why we couldn't do it, but I don't think anybody's really entertaining the idea of trying to put carbon in the existing system. It's more about, do we do the upgrade to the existing plant, or do we just build a whole new plant?
And it would The clear wall remains.
The,
We
the,
will be able to use the,
Well, I think
new
it is.
Yeah.
yes. Yes.
anything else on? Any hands? Okay, thanks, Bonnie. Next up is the resiliency checklist that we've been talking about for so long and has really made some progress. For those of you who need a reminder, we've been working on a checklist for project proponents. Just to get, I think that originally it originated as sort of almost an educational thing. And so, hey, is your property in a future flood hazard area? And what are, have you even thought about this kind of thing? And so then we decided to formalize it a bit more. And it's gotten shorter and shorter, actually, more succinct. And it really touches on future flood hazard area and also a bit of education about adaptation techniques and if they've entertained them and what they are doing if they have entertained them. And so it has been presented in front of the Concom, and I believe that some commissioners got some questions and maybe some concerns, and then also the planning board. And so I would open it up to either one of you if you want to bring any thoughts on those presentations.
You can go ahead.
Okay, just for, I was gonna say, defer to the chair of the committee. Just briefly, we don't have anybody from the planning board here. Generically speaking, I think the general sense that I got was folks weren't sure exactly how this should roll out just yet. They weren't, I get, and I'm thinking both your conservation commission discussion, but also planning board discussion. Questions about whether or not it should be sort of like there as like a tool for folks to use. But the question being, do we roll out something like this, a checklist like this, where there are then criteria in ordinances or regulations that the board or commission can then point to and say, measuring the applicant's responsiveness to some of the criteria, for instance. So sorry, just to give an idea of some of the stuff that we were talking about, just gonna flip through here. But once you get through, you're filling an application or whatnot. You get these questions about what kind of things you've done for resiliency. And so where like the commission has a lot more overlap, I think, with some of these criteria based on the regulation they work with, but to sort of tie it into regulations where the commission or the planning board, if they're reviewing this material from an applicant as part of an application materials, and it says, here's what the things we've done, for landscaping to, maximize green space or preserve mature trees, et cetera. Some of these things, they might have regulations they can specifically deal with and sort of, discuss back and forth with the applicant, whether or not they've come far enough to comply or address the concerns. In some cases, there isn't something directly in there, and so you might have dialogue or back and forth between the commission or the board and the applicant, but not necessarily any way of resolving that per se, because the commission or board may not have authority to direct something, So if that's the case, then it creates an awkward situation, and so it's
Essentially, they may be questioning what can they do with this?
what can they do with this? And it's
Yeah.
preferable in some ways to have a link in there directly in the regs. So we talked about utility and how to make it most useful, where it could be a tool for people in advance of an application, maybe help them to refine their plans. But then if it's rolled in as part of the application form of regulations, does the board or commission have enough that they can point to and say, thank you for providing this information, but we'd like you to go further with this one, and here's why, so. That was kind of-
Yeah. I just want to also, the flip side of that, that's from the commission's perspective in terms of how useful this would be as a tool in reviewing an application and being able to tie it to regulations. But on the other side, we got some fairly strong commentary from city councilors
Yeah, thank you. So-
that they were very concerned that this appears to be regulatory in nature, and that even though it's not, and we've just explained how it wasn't, that it was just sort of helpful checklist, whatever, to help an applicant go through some ideas about how they might incorporate adaptation measures into their project, that it would feel as though it was a new regulation. And in effect, maybe should be called a new regulation and therefore should go through the city council, even though the council doesn't technically have the ability to promulgate our regulations. That's the commission.
Mhm.
But it was called into question that this was not appropriate in that sense, and pretty strongly. So I think both of those things highlighted for us that this may be better right now until there is somehow or other in the future an ordinance or a regulation change that does require these things, and then we really truly need the checklist. Until then, maybe it's better as a standalone, like outside of the open gov permitting process, where it's embedded right now, a standalone education piece, helpful to residential property owners, businesses. that.
Yeah, I just appreciate you actually mentioning that because, and we have at least one counselor here today, which is great. There was that discussion, Mark raised that concern, and I think there's sort of parallel there between the discussion between the checklist and the regulations. At the same time, the commission, and in some cases, the planning board, depending on the criteria we're looking at, do have their own statutory authority, their ability to establish regulations within the jurisdiction. There might be certain cases or certain areas where it does require, say, a council update to a zoning ordinance or something, already granted or whatnot. And then where you start to get into the area. And so the way that we left it when we were talking with Mark at the time was if there was something like this was going to be rolled out, that there might be in a sort of a basic line, there might be a communication with the city council saying this is something that there's dialogue about rolling something like this out. And it just sort of as an FYI, more so than it was sort of originally framed, I think by him, it might be something that requires approval from the council. And that again depends on what exactly is being brought forward. Does it require council approval? Does it deserve an update of what's happening with these boards and commissions for permitting or whatnot? So it's a whole spectrum of thoughts people might have, but I think the idea here was to get to a better way of evaluating things from a long-term resiliency sustainability perspective, and whether that becomes like an informal process that helps to improve the plans versus a formal one where you can compel an applicant to make substantive changes to a plan.
So I don't know about you, Joe. I left that meeting, Barb was there, feeling like this needs to be pulled out of OpenGov. And
Yeah. I thought just that it should be
Yeah.
just a tool,
right,
useful tool, personally. Because there are a lot of things in it that really aren't related to wetland regulations. Just more resiliency.
And I think that's where we had started. Where we started was it was going to be a tool. It wasn't necessarily going to be integrated into, in what is it? OpenGov, whatever that, I know what it is. And also we actually tried to start with standards, or at least basing it off of standards. And we spent so much time trying to base it off standards that really haven't been developed for most communities yet, even though, or they have, but they're applying it in different ways, or it's just not quite applicable to Newburyport. And so we boiled it down to this fairly simplistic application and put it in OpenGov. And so if we do take it out, which I can kind of understand, because what our commissioners going to do with this exactly, other than open up maybe a can of worms and giving headaches to folks.
I would think it's a
But
good
like, how do
educational
we get folks to use it as an educational tool, and how is it most beneficial and not onerous or just another silly thing, stupid,
Well,
frustrating thing that they have to do?
Just to help the conversation
Yeah.
along at the office, anyway, our perspective, generally speaking, was that we could at least for people applying for the Conservation Commission permits, or they're applying for planning board permits, for instance, that's an obvious place where just on the landing page for a permit application, we try to let people know in advance. They come to our pages and they're looking through the permit process, the regulations. We might have something there, of course, but we might actually write an OpenGov that says, before you file your application, please look at these things, because these are things that can improve your plan. They might help to get you through the permit process, because the Board of Commissioners concerns will be better addressed when it comes in. So all those kind of tools and resources, the way that we normally meet with people and go through an informal review of a plan and give guidance, it might be that we can point them to that, even if it's not a regulatory requirement. We can say, this is best practices over here. We recommend you take a look at this before you file. Obviously, the earlier they do that, the better. If they've already prepared plans, they're less likely to want to make tweaks to those before they rush it into the board for, trying to get it in for a second review.
It's pretty much where we have started.
Yeah.
because it's the right time for when someone's planning a project, so this is where they come and this is when we want them to start looking at these things.
I do like the term best management practices, from a resiliency standpoint, because, that may encourage people to look at it, like, oh, well,
Yeah. And that's actually better terminology, best management practice rather than regulation or standard, because we don't actually have those yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fidgeting because, this whole, interest of the council may change in about 3 weeks. Cause we're in the middle of the silly season, so maybe it's advisable to wait till after the November election. And Councilor Preston may have an opinion on this too, that perhaps those objections will melt away or become more pointed after the election by the councilors who are elected or re-elected, after that's taken place.
And it doesn't even really.
Because I think maybe it's, at least in part, a matter of timing. So I agree with what Joe was saying, is that, it's advisory, It should
Yeah,
help people
I think
plan their
think
projects.
of it more of a
That's the
survey
purpose.
sort of thing.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Can you both just, but I don't think Kim has seen this, just to go off a
That
little
doesn't sound too
bit. so that
simple.
it has it.
No, let me just add to that, while you're trying to pull this together. You know, I think, let's call it, what's really happening. Counselor Wright lives on Plum Island in a
Yeah.
very flood-prone area, shall we call it? But I think it's probably gonna hit a little hard for anybody on Plum Island.
Yeah.
He's just probably more representative. You know, I certainly never thought of this as an issue. But now that you're saying all of this, I do sort of get where it's coming from. I mean, if I were to go on to, because it's in open, you know, open gov and seems like it's part of the permitting process, it might seem more as a requirement as opposed to an educational tool in this context. I think because we're all so inside of it, we don't really think about it that way, right? But to the average resident going on, I can see where it sort of would seem like more than educational and suggestion.
And actually, in terms of Plum Island, I think you're right, people on Plum Island are gonna immediately be the ones who think this is about them.
Yes.
But practically, they're already dealing with way more than this.
Mhm.
This is nothing for them. They already know that, and they're not gonna move in or out of the flood zone necessarily.
Yes.
On the mainland,
It's where
that
it's
is where I think, and the reality is that's where it will hit the hardest. People will be shocked that all of a sudden they look at this and they're like, wait,
I'm in a future flood zone?
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's, to me, it seems if it could be on the landing page, so not inside, OpenGov, but on the same landing page where the permitting, where I click through to
Yeah.
the permitting process,
Okay.
as an educational tool, you know, just a little write-up that says, you know, this is educational. It's very easy for me to say. I have no idea how much more work that is for the planning office to actually make that happen. But that seems like we could still educate without getting residents' feathers ruffled.
It's definitely
That's
doable.
the right spot for it, actually. I agree.
Yeah, maybe in that list of informational documents
Mhm.
on the left side there, you could have something like that, or have this there for folks. I know the council is concerned about it being coercive. You know, without having regulations, which, you know, Steve brought up, well, we want people to have green roofs, but we
We never coerced anyone to.
we never
do it.
stop somebody from doing a project because they didn't do a green roof,
Right.
so.
I think I'd like it, I do support pulling it out, at least initially, and then we have some time to think about, you know, how can maybe we do start looking at standards for some of these things and really looking at regulatory and things. But is there a way, and Joe just mentioned the left side, and I'm just kind of imagining any standard city webpage, is there a way to make it a little more prominent so that folks don't just look at that and then you go over there and then go off to what they really need to do?
Yeah, we can actually, I mean, we can take a look at a couple of places where we could have that, I mean, we're gonna duplicate things in too many places, but we can have it where, you know, it's under planning, it's under conservation, it's also like when you go to OpenGov and you're gonna apply for one of the types of
Mhm.
permits, like for a planning board or conservation, you might have a, you know, a thing there that says, please go to this, you know, first before you apply, you know?
Okay.
So there's several different places I think we can try to get people's attention, you know, even before they go to the application, but certainly when they get to the application, that's another place that we can, one last time, try to get their attention.
Policies and guidelines.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
we could
Kind of
make a
is.
separate thing that could be on planning and conservation and elsewhere. And we could just call it project planning. And and then we could include other sort of links that help people with planning their project, like what are you gonna need when you show up to submit your application? Here's a checklist you can go through about resiliency.
There's many different ways we do it.
It's not always about new construction either.
Yeah,
You
true.
know, really permitted, I mean, it could be, especially I think for so many people within that zone of wonderment, you know, whether or not they're gonna be inundated at some point in time, and there's some things that maybe these residents and businesses can do ahead of time,
Right.
you know, before they're inundated. I know, because I sit right in that zone, so, you know, if someone like me would be, you know, I have a house, you know, I'm not going to, you know, ever have a permit for,
Yeah.
hardscape down or anything like that, you know, so.
Be like a how to make your property or project more
More
resilient or
resilient.
something.
Right.
Yeah,
protect your investment, right?
Yeah.
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 You know,
Yeah. Shoot, I had a question. So if we did do that, put it somewhere else on the website, would we still be collecting that information? Or is it just truly a user?
I think it's still beneficial to try to get
I
it,
would
but I
like
think
to
it's,
collect it because I'd be interested at least how many people actually opened it.
It could be an optional attachment
Yes.
to an application. Cause if it's not part of an application, there's no need to see it. So, right for us, you know what I mean?
I
But
think I can get very inconsistent, like,
Yeah.
not, information and, whether somebody completes the whole process and gives us a result that we can compare in a table or like that, but anything's better than nothing, so.
Yeah, just as a first step, just to see
Yeah.
how, if people are even using it.
Yeah,
And if they are using it, how are they using it? Did they go and bother going to my map and seeing where their property is? Cause it's just more,
Yeah.
that kind of gets into how we can better communicate the issues, how we can, encourage folks to.
yeah.
Is there a way of,
Traffic jam.
is there a way of registering, how many clicks, going?
I'm sure there are.
Creating a PDF or something like that?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's like with, the website is one thing, but with OpenGov, like, if they actually go through the process, hopefully they make it the whole way through, but if they do the process and they do each, page, so to speak, of that step,
Yeah.
then we could tabulate, we could see the, have the results, essentially, of anything we've gotten over time and evaluate how well it's working, what the responses have been, that kind of thing. If they don't actually fill out the forms on the, there's just a checklist and download as a PDF, we're not getting any data out of that necessarily, right? But if they fill out the fields in OpenGov, we have something we can compare. It might be, a table that we can look through the information that we're on, we can compare, how many checkboxes we got on this or that, debate what the questions are and all that. Could be helpful.
Is everything that's on OpenGov regulatory?
I mean, we were using it all for permits or applications to the city for a variety of applications, like an event, scheduling is a type of application now as opposed to a permit, but it's basically all permits and applications for the most part.
Mhm.
But it can function here for that purpose without being an application form. We can use the tool essentially to have them go through those steps if we want,
The city uses it for broader things.
Right.
But the resident facing piece is really for
Mm.
permits and applications.
Right, exactly. We could use it because it has the same functionality as like filling out a form and doing and tabulating and all that stuff in the background. We can use it for that purpose, even though it's primarily for permits and applications.
So how about this then, we regroup as a subcommittee, just to make sure the introduction is clear, that, this is it for information, whatever we want.
With the
We really want to get out of it, yeah. With the
Yeah.
Sounds like we're treating it that
that
way.
point,
Okay.
so it doesn't.
And then let's just get it up.
Yeah, I'd like to, as soon as we can make it live,
6
the
months and
better.
see if we get any clicks, and if we don't, then we're gonna rework it.
And maybe eventually it does migrate back into OpenGov if regulations change or
Yeah.
ordinances change, if we have something that we can move back over, but. Yeah.
Well, I think that'd be worth doing it as a survey to those people that are living in some zone.
I think that would be so,
I mean, not as a permit, but as a survey.
I think people get so worked up. You'd have some people who are like, this is so cool, and other people would.
Well, this is also contemplating a project or plan being brought
Yeah.
forward, so what do they fill out if they're not?
Don't work.
Well, we could send something out that's like, hey, we've got this new thing on our website, come take a look, but I wouldn't want to direct it at
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
group of.
It's one thing to
Yeah.
educate, it's another agitate.
Yeah,
How do you feel like if you're doing a future project and this, having to fill out this form too, versus like, this is a resource, do you think you would find this useful if you were applying for a project, knowing that there are risks for your property and hazard zones, that kind of thing, like that, there's a different kind of framing or a different kind of utility for them. Anyway,
could that happen as part of, could that like survey piece happen as part of an application process, or is that too close to the way we have it now?
well, that I think was partly what Mark was concerned about, and what Mark was concerned about is a little bit parallel to what I was concerned about in part, which is the fact that there's potentially a disconnect between picture a homeowner who's going through this, right, who doesn't necessarily understand all the terms, has to become familiar with them. They also are expected potentially, if it's a survey or a form as part of an application, they're expected to fill it out. If they don't fill it
Yeah.
out, does that make an incomplete application? Do they end up before a board or commission and then they're having discussion, commission members or planning board members may want something to happen because they're great idealistic things to have, but the regulations don't call for it. So then you're having a back and forth that's awkward. So I think part of what he was getting at was part of what I was getting at, which is that it's better if those don't become points of conflict regardless of any other perspective, right? So.
I would much rather roll this out soft and not cause a stir and not be able to defend it than
Yeah.
roll it out cause a stir and have to backtrack.
Yeah.
Because it's truly not
Because
meant to
it
cause a
could,
stir.
it could, yeah, it could really blow it up.
Yeah.
We do the wrong way.
People can definitely get themselves really tangled.
Really?
Forbes is somewhat new to this.
Well, not really.
Not
anymore.
Not anymore.
But I mean, imagine, you're going on to get a permit and you're already like, I really need to do X to my property. And then you find this and you're like, well, I don't have that and I don't have that. And oh my God, I'm never gonna get this permit, like.
Right.
No.
And that's not the
Probably
intent.
certainly It shouldn't be a requirement.
Right.
You know, as a resident and as.
But if it's in
Regulations.
The same place you go to fill out the permit application, I can see where people.
I know. It's so hard though, because at the same time, we really want those people
Yeah.
to be the ones looking at this,
Exactly.
whether they freak out about it or not. It's important for them to know they don't have to do anything with it. But it's also important for them to have to digest that a little bit, even if then they say they're gonna ignore it.
Yeah.
So we'll find the right place. We'll have this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's still, we'll circle back at the next meeting, we'll be able to give an update on where we are.
Yeah.
It's like he's still working on it.
Sort
We'll
of
find a
that.
place for it.
All right.
Floating away, I think.
I'm gonna move on just because of time too. For MVP 2.0, I see Molly's up there as well as Sarah. Would one of you, Molly, maybe want to give an update to the group, just where we are on 2.0?
Sure. So we received 10 applicants for the planning grant, and we've narrowed it down to 3, and we will be interviewing those on Friday. And our core team is city employees. We have health director, fire chief, Kelsey, who else? Sarah Landry and Andy Egmont jumped on as well.
Oh, good.
And then- yeah, and myself if needed, and Andy if needed. So Peyton, our one of our people that's helping on the DEI or the equity portion will be starting to set up meetings for the core group, and then we'll add to that with the community members. And hopefully Kelsey and I can catch up sometime. I know we have a meeting next week, right, with Andy? Andy, is that right?
Is that tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
I think
Or is it
tomorrow.
tomorrow?
Yeah, we
Okay,
can touch
time
base.
flies.
I think it's tomorrow, but we can touch base on it then, yeah.
Yeah, we can go over everything then. Yes, but yeah, we're moving slowly forward, I would say.
It's a 2-year project though, so it's.
Yes, it's a 2-year project, yeah.
Any
That's it.
questions on that? Thank you. For grants and funding updates, I don't think we hadn't gotten a decision on the CZM, application for the wastewater treatment facility sidewalk. Unfortunately, we did not receive that. That was a $2 million ask and the pot was 3.4 million for the entire.
It's not a very lot of money to stay.
And so that would have taken a large chunk, but it was definitely worth.
Did they give us feedback? Was it about the size of the grant?
Sarah, can you speak, or anyone else? Can anyone speak to that? I don't know.
I asked Nancy if she was going to pursue feedback and she said she was, but I haven't seen any meetings or follow up on that.
I'm assuming that to some extent, just the fact that it's a hardened structure as opposed to a natural, like coastline, for instance, is one criteria that might have that effect.
But you know, they carved out hardscape.
Yeah, I don't think so, Andy. 'Cause
I know.
I think 3.4 million and we asked for 2 is probably
That's probably the biggest
the
one.
biggest one.
Yeah.
we need to find out because it feeds into the question of whether we're gonna reapply for it next year and how do we modify the grant.
Yeah.
We need to find out.
I do too.
All right, thanks, Sarah. And then, our MVP application for the Cashman Park feasibility study, we did not get. We did have Molly, Sarah, and I, Nancy and Andy, were all on a call getting feedback for that. And, with Michelle Rowden, and she said she fought for it. It was one of her, she really, really liked it. It was really, really close. But she gave us some good feedback on how to, change it up for this year. If we wanted to apply, she encouraged us to reapply for it. I think, and Sarah, everyone, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things that, and I thought it was kind of ironic, that they wanted to see is having not only letters of support, but also letters of, I can't remember what she called it, but basically commitments from other groups within the city, partners that want to work with us on this project. And I thought it was funny because it sounded an awful lot like what we did.
Well, you just did.
For the
Right.
MVP, where
Yeah,
we
but
had our-
that was their point. I think that was the
Uh,
point. They wanted us to tie it to the previous MVP grant. They
Well,
they wanted to
yeah,
see us using those learnings in the next one and.
right. But I think that they were applying that to everyone. And so I'm wondering, I'm like, oh, did we get dinged on something that we started, whatever.
Yeah, right.
Who knows? But it was really good feedback. It was very, very competitive. Again, it was a smaller pot of money with a lot of asks, and she encouraged us to reapply with that and some other feedback.
Can I ask a question just about, because it's grants and funding, even though it's not on the list? So we had a lot of conversation in the last meeting about the boardwalk, which was great.
Mhm.
But I thought I read in the paper the other day that we got some Seacoast grant for that. Applied, okay, so we don't,
You're talking about we're talking about
the boardwalk here.
The
Oh,
Seacoast
sorry.
Economic
Oh, sorry, yeah,
Grant, yeah,
gotcha.
we've applied for it.
How much?
Forget the dollar
I
amount.
think it was, there's a requirement of like a 20% match, so it was I think we used a conservative number of 2 million less than 20% match.
But this certainly feeds into the discussion that I wanted to have, sort of skipping ahead to the state's new environment and climate one-stop application, where I think it's all, you all, I'm sure I've seen it, I've sent a couple emails, I think Sarah has as well, where the state has combined the application process, put MVP in with, I think, 6 other programs, and the letter of expression of interest are due on the 28th. And so that would include, if we decided to reapply for the Cashman feasibility study, that could go in there. We have an opportunity to get feedback from 3 other projects. I sent the group a list that Sarah had come up with that, we've all touched on in the past. But it's the 28th is coming up. So I
We're gonna
think
make a decision.
we gotta make a decision on that. And so I'd like to make sure we have time to talk about that if folks are able and want to. So happy just to open that up. And Sarah, if you wanna briefly describe what you were thinking, not to put you on the spot once again, feel free, or we can just open it up to discussion.
Well, so the 2 that we applied for in FY '26 that we didn't get are both eligible to be reapplied for. So wastewater treatment facility sidewalls and the Cashman Park feasibility study. And then the other ones that I just picked out of minutes that we've talked about in the past include a broader resiliency feasibility study for the downtown waterfront area. Kind of expanding on the Cashman Park effort. So if we're going with the Cashman Park, I don't know that we'd want to try that one too. We've been told in the past that we'd need clear letters of support from property owners and support from businesses and associations if we were going to do that application. So we don't need that for the expression of interest, but it's a bigger project and a harder application.
And am I
Sorry.
remembering correctly, you asked Michelle, would that make our Cashman Park application stronger if we expanded it? And she said not necessarily.
Correct.
I was just gonna say, I also think things on one side of the bridge are very different perhaps than on the other. We're talking about public land versus lots of private
Right.
land as well. Much more complicated, much more in terms of like even just getting everybody on the same page for a project, getting a letter of support, I don't see that that's realistic or the best focus of our efforts and context here. I would rather focus on something I think is more likely and viable to, and out an effective way. And just to me, that's more complicated to take on. You're really talking about getting everybody in the private sector to all agree together on how things might be resolved here. And that's a much bigger thing than talking about something, for instance, a little more straightforward, like a specific city property along the coast, that Cashman Park, just for example. So.
I agree with that, Andy, and I remember we had a conversation with Michelle about this bigger project when we were first talking with her about Cashman.
Yeah.
And she did think that it was a great concept, and I think we all agree it's a great concept, but I think we're a little early for it, and in some ways, and you're right, it is such a more complicated, bigger project. We have to put that application together with all that detail really fast, where we have Cashman ready to go, and we've already gotten positive feedback about reapplying. So I would stick with those two, and then add a third if we have any,
Those two
priority.
being,
being those sidewalls and the,
Okay.
and Cashman, and then whatever else. Is there a water supply anything else at the top? Yeah, exactly. Like,
The
we
other
should-
two,
High priority.
We could use the money for it, for
Yeah.
sure.
two others that we talked about in previous meetings.
But it just
What
it's
were
worth clarifying, right, with these grant programs before, right? So is, in this case, are they, because some of these, they're looking for public participation as the primary goal of the grant cycle or program versus like getting to design plans for construction and so forth, where we might try to get to some specific result. It partly depends on the criteria that they're reviewing things for, what they're ranking it for, what their priority is. And partly why we're doing the 2.0, for instance, is partly because we can't get to the construction funding or other implementation funding unless we do this public participation process, even though, as Jay mentioned, the city already did effectively a lot of that during this last cycle. We have to essentially do some of that again because they hadn't created this program, it wasn't there, it wasn't part of it. So in order to get to the funding we can leverage, for some of the projects, we have to do that process. It's still beneficial,
Yeah, and it's just this is just an initial feedback process, right?
Right.
I mean, this is just to throw 3 things at them and
Yeah.
hear what they say.
Wouldn't the ad count as public process?
The water group itself, I mean?
The dam project.
And the education.
Oh, no, I agree. What I mean is like, could the monies or and I don't forget, I apologize, I don't know off the top of my head, but for this particular cycle or grant, is it actually monies that we could use to advance that effectively? Or is it just to have more participation, which isn't necessarily more, might be more helpful to us to get to something where it's the
It
specific.
depends on what
Depends on what we're.
grant they would say that it belongs under
Right.
and what they fund, which is, I think that, which is why this process is so great, because it gives us the opportunity
yes.
to feel that all out
Instead of
before we have to
guessing,
move
like.
forward. Right.
Like,
Right, which one of these
Really
has
great.
legs and which bucket would you put it into so we can then apply for it? Because like in some cases, they might look and say, we're really interested in public participation. Whereas other ones, depending on what we're interested in too, it might give us the path to design funds or construction funds.
So for the dam and seawall repair, because Ken just mentioned the dam, and we're talking about that, it's a little bit there. I'm not quite clear on it. But funding for repair and removal of these structures, dams, provides critical support to communities as they build resilience to climate change. So they're actually looking for dams that are like in Ipswich, I believe, do we want to remove this dam because it's causing some, or if there's
Picturing an inverse
ecological
situation.
benefits
Yeah.
to removing the dam, where we're talking about critical.
They might have to, we're still
New
talking
grant
about
for
resilience.
putting up
But
there.
we-
Right, because in the
Is
future-
it worth, I think it might be worth throwing together, we have the information, just
We
doing
have the
an
information.
expression.
Plus somewhere,
We should ask them. It's
It's
completely
worth putting in the
related.
mix, right? So
Yeah.
that's our third one.
we just recently, I can't remember the context now, but there was all this discussion about applying for grants in conjunction with other communities.
Right.
So West Newbury
West
would be
Newbury.
right there with us on the dam, right?
Yeah.
So.
Good point.
So why don't we circle back to Nancy London and this is the third one?
I think so.
talked to Nancy about
Sorry?
this earlier today,
Right.
to try to give her.
Yeah.
Say, hey, could we look into
Yeah.
I'll
Okay.
circle back with her.
As,
And then cash.
Should anyone
Newbury
talk in
arguably
detail?
as well, they
Right,
get
I was
water
gonna
from
say,
us,
and
right?
yeah, Kristen's not on the call today, but.
has the city talked with Angus in any detail about possibly of a joint application?
Oh, we
Not
don't,
this
we
specific.
just started these
That's what
conversations,
we're
really,
talking about.
at least from the ad hoc's perspective, we've just sort of,
Maybe that's.
The sooner
Mhm.
I can't imagine Angus
that
would be
discussion
engaged in
takes
it though.
place,
Why wouldn't they want to be a
probably
part of
Yeah,
that?
I can't
better instead
imagine
of
he would.
having us have gone halfway down the road and say, hey, and by the way, this involves you, so.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes, I do think we need to be thoughtful about the fact that, Angus seems very anxious to me, about getting an IMA in place, right? And
Yeah.
so
Mhm.
I would imagine he's going to use this as leverage with the IMA as well, but we need to do the IMA anyways, so.
I have a question online, Ellie, I think you have speaking privileges, you can go ahead.
Hi there, thank you. I also just wanted to mention there is also another grant called the Drought Resiliency and Water Efficiency Grant that was just issued or announced by EEA. And it's new, but it might be of interest for some of this work.
Can you say the name again, drought and?
It's called the Drought Resiliency and Water Efficiency Grant.
Thank
Um,
you.
EEA.
That's amazing. Do you know what kind of funding level they've got?
It's pretty big. Here, I'll figure out a little bit more while I'm talking to you, but they just posted it recently, and I think it's for either, you can apply either for planning or construction. So, please hold. I'll get a little bit more info.
No pressure. Thank you for bringing it forward. We can look it up.
Yeah, yeah. You'll circulate that.
Yeah, I'll catch up with you.
Thanks for
Thanks, Kim.
Bye, thank you.
Solve our big range project.
Just to be fair, just to cover the other one, Sarah had taken from our previous minutes, we had talked about coastal monitoring of Plum Island study. That was that LiDAR-based monitoring that we had talked about a while ago. I'm not voting, I'm not saying I should or shouldn't, I'm just bringing it up. And also cooling corridors grant, for tree planting and looking at the neighborhoods.
Can you explain a little bit about the island monitoring? Is that something that you were saying Salisbury's doing and we might try to?
You just want to make sure everybody's clear. So Salisbury got a grant. It was sort of a regional partnership, right? To apply for, because like Connie said, like sometimes they like it better if 3 communities are benefiting from something. So Salisbury took the lead, but there are some resources now coming in that'll help us to have regular, sort of drone flight mapping of some of the sand migration out there. Partly because we have this sort of mishmash, right, of federal and state, data or resources at different times, this isn't solving like a permanent long-term thing, but it's at least giving some sort of a test run, for instance, of like an extended period in which the communities would have actual data that they could compare and not rely upon entirely federal government or, DCR to do a study or whatnot. So there is some resource at least coming in for that. We have to talk, more with Salisbury, but that's something I think in the near term, we already have something in motion to provide greater data on that area. But that's, it's sort of like the same area we're trying to get to.
If it seems like maybe that's small money, essentially data
relatively
collection and storage of that information so that when and if we need it, it would be there in an
Right.
organized way.
Right.
Which is not something we've never had. It would be great. I think, we wouldn't be using it on a regular basis. It's something, but if it could be collected and
Show trends, right?
stored and, analyzed when we need it, because trends out there, as you know, are like, there's a trend one year, it's not a trend the next year, it's a trend in this location, and then it's a trend in the other location. So it's really just about being able to replenish after storm damage and seeing potentially the result or consequences of any kind of improvements made by like jetty or whatever.
Yeah, and I think I would agree. I think it also goes to this question of like, could we get into any kind of regular cycle, which as Julie mentions, it's variable, it can change anytime, right? But could we get into a cycle where we have in concert with the Army Corps, there's a dredge, there's a beach nourishment process, right? Sand, movement, taking the spoils of the dredge, right? Could we get into some sort of cycle like this, right? We already kind of are in a cycle in a way over time with doing stuff like this, but could we get into more organized fashion with this and get an idea, with the variables we can't change? Can we get into some cycle where we have a good, control of what's happening or idea what's happening, and then we can intervene with, periodic nourishment, essentially sand nourishment, right? That's kind of what some of this might be useful for in long term.
So do you think that is worth looking into, or?
I feel like that area is already
It's
covered to
different.
some
That's what
degree
I'm
in the near
thinking, like-
term. We're getting a resource.
So it sounds like it's a good idea, we're working on it, in some capacity.
I think
not for
it's-
this.
Maybe not. I think it's a good idea. It's probably not a ton of money. I mean, I don't know, it depends on what these LiDAR lights cost, but I almost feel like it's nice to have. It would be like really helpful to have that information when we need it, but again, it's not solving any problem for us, it's just providing us data.
And it isn't an indefinite resource, unfortunately, right? It's not going on indefinitely. It's for a period of time. The other thing that I worry about with something like that is, even though I think that'll be useful, is the potential for like the federal government to say, all right, well, thank you for your data, but we haven't done this ourselves. This data doesn't mean anything.
Yep.
They've done all this modeling and, the AI system running for a year, in the background about the sand migration.
Yep.
What if they just say, thank you for this, but we don't consider it, something we can enter into our, debate. So it'll only be useful to a degree, but it will still
Exactly.
provide an
So
additional resource.
maybe
that we
it's
don't
not
currently
something
have.
we'll.
I wouldn't focus
Super
more on
grant.
that. front
We
of
don't
it,
need
but-
it, let's just. put it
Okay,
that
so
way.
that's
Yeah.
because we do need.
Yeah, we need other things.
Have we consulted the harbor master about this? Because that sandbar from the old Coast Guard station is really creating a hazard to navigation, and the Army Corps should be aware of it if they're not.
Yeah. It's one reason why to me, I keep asking, why does the Army Corps not perhaps think about the benefits for them of having whether it be a spur or some other configuration there, or a weir or whatever, because they are getting more sand in the navigation channel constantly too. And so the resistance to doing something different doesn't make sense even, I think, from their lens, but you know, because they're just getting more sand in the channel. And you can't solve that problem completely, but I wonder a lot more. So it makes it more frequent they have to come out, which you think they would care about because that's dollars and, you know, that they have to do with.
The last one was the cooling corridors grant, and so it would be looking at tree planting around the city, which I absolutely would love to do, but I don't know if we have our thoughts together around that enough. Or
Have you spoken with the tree commission?
we have not, no, because
David?
we haven't really, I would love to pivot more toward trees and shading and cooling in the city, but we haven't.
Yeah, and they lost all of their funding in this year's budget. Yeah, they have nothing. They have the money that's still coming in through funds,
Oh,
but,
gosh. Okay.
but they do not have any city money, to plant any new trees.
So maybe I should reach out to them.
Yeah.
Is the grant for just city property, planting on city property, or could it be used like an industrial park?
I have not looked into this. If anyone else has looked into it, it's new.
Tony, what about the foundation money that was designated for trees?
Font?
Font, yeah.
Yeah, so Font is
still-
still
still
generating money, but that's not city money ultimately, right? It
yeah.
obviously comes through the city, but that's private donations. But the DPS line item went to zero.
They're targeting tree planting projects, extreme heat mitigation, siting trees. It's not telling me if it has to be on city property necessarily. Eligible
I imagine
municipalities, well,
public property or something.
municipalities and nonprofit organizations may apply, state housing authorities, public and private schools, universities. Applicants are encouraged to explore partnerships like everything else they're doing, which is good. They should have a clear tree planting and maintenance plan.
Yeah, so we absolutely
Okay.
have a tree planting and maintenance plan, and to be fair, the tree commission still has a line item. It is simply to water the trees that are being planted, so no money to plant new trees. But there is an existing list of everywhere in the city where people have requested trees, where the city wants to put trees. All of that in, you know, because we have a tree warden, the tree warden by state law has to maintain a maintenance list and, you know, all of those sorts of things. So yes, they have a lot of information about that at their fingertips.
So I would volunteer that I could reach out to the tree commission to see if there's any interest.
Jane, they can't apply on behalf of the municipality. If the trees are going on if the city's land, the city has to apply. They can do it in conjunction with, but.
Yeah, I mean, the tree commission is a city commission.
Yeah.
But
So this would
Font
be
is
Font.
not.
Font would be
Font
a
is different.
partner though, because they want partnerships, so.
Yes, Font would be a partner.
I'm guessing that they don't want to allow this for private property planting, because then there'd be no assurance in terms of maintenance. and
Exactly.
longevity.
Or somebody just cut them down.
So,
All right, I'll reach out if that's all right with the group, the committee. I'll reach out and just see if
It's
there's any.
probably also worth confirming, just like a general matter with grants, like we just after us or Nancy or someone else is involved with getting an application in. When it comes back, like in this case, it's tree commission, so it's more like a public works, you know, sort of thing in general, because that's what things are housed there. You know, with the tree commission in relationship, but so it maybe makes more sense there, but you know, who's the point person for running the grant after we get it, if we get it,
Good
right?
point.
And
Just
so
do the work.
who's gonna stand up and coordinate with the tree commission and is it getting trees and working in the field, where we're going, is it some sort of study? You know, somebody has to do that point piece, so I don't know, like in this case, we just wanna make sure we have somebody lined up to do that, it's not
That's the tree warden.
in limbo.
I would
Well,
think
again,
so,
yeah,
but,
so.
Yeah.
I
It
mean,
would have to be
there it is,
communication.
it's a defined.
Andy, what about Market Landing Park? There were initially more trees planned that were not funded.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
there something easy that can be pulled out there?
I mean, I certainly think it's a great location and I'd be an advocate for it, but you're talking about on the east side, sort of the parking lot there, Mike Hennessey's in charge of some trees in there. Because they were essentially dropped based on the budget limitations, they were dropped from the final plan there near the parking area. So the landscape improvements with the east block weren't done initially here. But we thought over time we could still add the tree row there, and that landing strip. So that's, I think, gonna happen very well once it's going. But so there's like three trees there, I think now. And so it's only a handful of trees, so to speak, that would go in there, but that's certainly a concrete improvement. I would be in favor of that, but I wouldn't want to diminish any other possibility that might be larger citywide, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
So-
at the end of the day, so that would be Parks Commission. Tree Commission is really city property, not Parks Commission. That Market Landing Park would really be Parks Commission, but
Versus street
Like,
trees.
Right,
so
they're two
Tree
different-
Commission is really street trees. But at the same token, Mike Hennessy is the Parks Manager, Mike Hennessy is the tree warden, so.
The benefit, I think, of Market Landing Park is that,
Go ahead, Sarah.
was just gonna say, I think the benefit of a Market Landing Park application is that you can tie it to the environmental justice, people using the park for cooling. You can just kind of make a better
Yeah.
a better case than generic shade trees all over the city.
Yeah,
If
I
we
think
did
so.
shade
But
trees in the environmental justice zones or something like that, then you'd have a
the
better.
question is really the order of magnitude and what we get out of it. Like that could be a subset of what we're applying for, because if we get something bigger for the entire city, and that's only a small piece, we're gonna, you know, great. If that's the only thing we can get, then we go for just that.
And so then, yeah, it would be Parks Department, Tree Commission,
Right.
City Resiliency Committee, and then Fonds and for Parks Alliance.
include
Yeah, but if you
Concom.
talk with Mike Hennessy, he's
Should I
gonna be
reach
able
out
to.
to Mike
Yeah.
or the tree commissioner, like the chair?
I mean, Mike is the tree warden.
So, should I-
I don't even know, Steph Pellegrini was the chair
I
of the
don't
tree
know.
commission, I think she's leaving. I would ask Mike,
Okay, I'll
Mike
start
can
with
direct you in the right direction, but just on the environmental justice standpoint, so first of all, I think shade trees anywhere in the city are benefiting all of us from a cooling perspective, right? But I also, it's sort of a long story, we got a grant, from a business in the, industrial park that had done some illegal stuff. And they wanted to get the maximum credit for it, so we specifically planted trees in environmental justice areas, which is really, like the low-income housing part, you know, Kelleher Park and something terrace, Horton Terrace, you know, all of those sorts of things as well. I mean, they certainly could benefit from even more trees, so there's a way to, you know, very directly, tie in environmental justice as well.
Yeah, all right, I'll reach out to Mike. And even if this is planting a seed for next year, it's worth it.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Mike
yeah,
Hennessy
let's
would
see if,
answer a lot of questions.
All right, cool. Okay, so I just want to make sure we're interested in applying for, you know, for expression of interest. The treatment, wastewater treatment plant. The dam with West Newbury and Newbury possibly,
Cashman Park.
Cashman Park, and I'm reaching out to Mike Hennessy, the Tree Commission. And so a feedback that Michelle gave us is, yes, you can send in for expressions of interest. That means your feedback's gonna be diluted because they're only gonna spend the same amount of time. And so I would like to reach out to her when we do this and say, well, we've already gotten feedback on Cashman, so don't spend any time on that, so that they just spend the time on the 2 or 3 that we haven't gotten feedback on. I assume that they'll do that.
Although I-
Cashman one again? Is that filling Cashman?
Sorry?
Freezing it? Is
Oh.
that-
It's
Like
a feasibility
resiliency.
study for, sort of adaptation.
I think the way I look at it is we're keeping the ball fields, right, and viable as long as possible, of course, right? But we're actually probably changing as much of the other landscaping to deal with inundation, you know, maybe more plantings and, you know, grading and, you know, things like that that can more easily handle the inundation, but still recede, right, and all that. So it might be more likely not taking something away, not drastically changing grading across the whole thing. That's gonna be more involved, but maybe more likely like landscaping, shoreline plantings and, you know, drainage kind of, okay. Yeah.
We're basing it on a project that the consultant that we worked with on this application and Woods Hole Group did in down in Braintree, is it Sarah? Was it Braintree?
Oh,
Yes,
And
yep.
he did an amazing, it's like a park almost exactly like Cashman, and they did this amazing resiliency project there and then actually constructed and implemented it. So we saw that as a model for what we could potentially look at Cashman, and that's essentially the grant application.
And what MVP really liked was,
Yeah, actually.
the adaptation
Yeah.
phasing, so that it was flexible adaptation plans, so, you know, looking from the next 10 years, 20 years, 40 years,
Yeah.
and what we can do, so it's not a static plan, and that was definitely a bonus. even though we didn't get the grant.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I'm gonna move on, so we are super late, not late, we're not running over. We're running out of time. Infrastructure story maps, again, this goes to our whole story map, the picture of the city and where our water projects are and the other infrastructure projects are. I don't know if we have what we need from you, Andy, sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's quite right. No,
Just
Sarah's
what we
probably,
thought.
Sarah's probably waiting for me, so I'll still go back on that.
But Sarah and I have been going back and forth with John Eric and we've heard from Jordy, so they're in really good shape, but Sarah, they're not live yet. Like when I
Yes, they
go,
are.
they
The only
are.
one that's not live is Market Landing Park.
Oh, because last time I was in, I think it was in last week, I tried to, I just clicked on the link from the resiliency webpage and it told me to log in.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
we probably have to get that fixed.
yeah, so we need to do that.
You know the link, they're live. They got moved from MVPC to our license, our city's license, so maybe the website didn't get updated. I'll look at that.
Okay, yeah, I'm getting an ArcGIS login page when I click on the link.
I'll chase that down, Jane.
Thank you. And what I was thinking of doing once this is all spick and span is asking Kim to add it to the committee informational page because it's more in depth than that project page is, but we'll see.
Some of the projects on there are water supply.
Right, but in general,
In gen-
most
there's
of
a
them
lot
are water.
supply. Yeah, right. Okay. It's a good illustration
That's-
that way to do and.
Yeah. Yeah. Sarah, do you want to give a quick recap of the insure?
Yeah, sure. So do folks remember in June that Julia had spoken with Neil Duffy in Salem about a pilot program that they had funded by a couple of grants? When they were working with this company called Insure, and then subsequently John Eric and I went to a conference that Insure put on. And then after that, Insure came and gave a storm surge talk on climate related impacts to the insurance industry as a whole. They received a grant in this last FY 26 MVP round to do a similar grant with Plymouth to do a flood audit program for the business district and on the Plymouth waterfront. So there's now two programs, the one in Salem and the one in Plymouth. And I just think we ought to keep an eye on them and see if there's something that we can learn from those or build on for a grant for us in the future. So it's just kind of an FYI, they got a second grant. The one in Salem, their update was that they haven't gotten too far along with it. They're still trying to figure out what the resiliency audit would look like. So it hasn't progressed much since June when you talked to Neil, Julia.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you if they had said they thought they might have an update on how this tool was being implemented, their pilots sort of tested the tool by this fall.
Right.
But maybe not, maybe they are not ready yet.
When they gave the talk last month, I asked about it and they were still in the design phase.
Yeah.
So not too much progress, but hopefully that something will come out of that. And now this second grant that they've gotten. So they have expressed interest in doing something with Newburyport. I just think we've got a lot on our plate right now with MVP 2.0 and these other grants, and there's enough we can learn from Salem and Plymouth that we could maybe be in the next round when they.
Yeah, I'd like to see how this comes out for them. This is really like a brand new thing that they're testing out. So let Salem be the guinea pig and
We have enough there on our plate.
let them
already.
do the work. Yeah.
All right, well, Sarah, you're pretty tied into those emails, so just, I assume that you'll just keep tabs on it and. report back. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. And last quick question, I don't know, sorry, Julia and Joe, have there been And has there been anything on the urban park project for this year received?
I haven't heard from Steve or anyone else yet.
I don't,
Oh, is that the thing at the senior center?
well,
Yeah.
reworking it, but yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
The CPC cycle is coming up.
That got
so
smacked
no-
down.
Okay,
Long time
if
ago.
we say, well, we have kind of
We-
kept it alive and he definitely wanted to, and you know, just,
No,
I mean,
there hasn't.
there hasn't been, so.
unless you know a place you can put them.
No, I don't right now. There's a lot on.
No, I'd like to just pick up the little design that Kim did and just plunk it down somewhere else in the city.
Well, it's something we can revive at some point,
Yeah,
but right now, it's
absolutely.
tabled. The CPC won't be getting it.
I hate to sort of further this, but I mean, there was discussion about putting it on the other side of the senior center where the rose
Yeah.
bushes
Yeah,
are.
and
That
that's
didn't-
not eligible
yeah.
for CPC. It's interesting, the guidance says no garden or no landscaping in the vicinity of senior centers is an example of, like, they called out senior centers. I was like,
Crazy.
reading that, it's gonna be really hard.
I think they heard.
Why? So odd.
That is super odd.
I can't remember, it's been a while, but I just chuckled when I read that, I was like,
It makes me see reference.
There's only a reason, we just don't. know yet.
It seems black and white.
it went awry, and so, yeah, I mean, that kind of project, and it has to be a
Love to
landscape
know where
project, it
that
cannot be
is.
a garden. Can go other places, certain places, but in they, for CPA sort of calls out that it should be connected to a parks property over something else, so that's the guidance that's come out of it. I'd have to look, and this is a different hat,
Yeah.
but yeah, senior center.
It's just hard because we don't have water in a lot of our parks. I hate like,
For
That's the problem,
establishing
we
it
need
at least,
water.
yeah. All right, well, that's tabled, it can come back.
That's tabled. We'll,
don't you guys have CPC this week? Or
Yes,
soon?
yes. Tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
You should bid on water a little bit. Could we put like wells in? Intermittent wells instead of.
I think it's the expense of putting water, I mean, we could run from water lines in
Well,
lots of
it's
places
easy.
too, but
Our-
Grant money goes to.
our.
it's also about we don't really wanna put it in an active use park. We wanna put it in an area that's just a vacant green lawn that nobody uses.
Yeah.
And there aren't very many of those that aren't used as playing fields or dog parks or whatever. So that's why this
Especially
location
ones that
is
have
so
water.
perfect.
Yeah.
So if you
To me,
do
it's
a green
demonstration,
bit
yeah,
that nobody
for
wants
what
to use,
other
then
people
also
could do
add
on their
water, let us know.
Well, let's keep it in the back of our minds, because I think it's definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, that's it for agenda. Does anyone have anything else they want?
So how do we move forward on those expression of interest that are due in 2 weeks?
That's a wicked good question.
Good question, Sarah. I don't know, meet with Nancy.
I assume we're just.
Where's Nancy? when we need her?
Yeah, it's less than 2 weeks.
I think we just follow up after this meeting with
Yeah.
Nancy.
Yeah.
Who's going to do that?
I'll check in with, she might be circling back with us as a group, depending on some of the input she's looking for the grant.
I'm meeting with her tomorrow, hopefully about one lot of things, so I can,
Okay.
I mean, right before our
Oh, the
meeting.
letter, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
don't mind just
That would be
asking.
great. So those four,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get a sense of, we can talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
fantastic. Good, and we'll go from there.
And then anything for tomorrow's meeting? With Kelsey?
So Kelsey?
Yeah. Do we need to talk about now or no?
No,
I
Kelsey's
don't think
here.
Yeah, we have a meeting tomorrow at 1, so, but I don't think we need to talk about anything right now.
Our next meeting here will be the November 5th, 19th, right? Is that? we're good with
Yeah,
that?
November 19th, hybrid, 3 p.m. Here.
I was just gonna make a suggestion. I know like, historically, this meeting has started like, 3 and has sometimes gone longer. And I just, and partly to be fair to my own staff as well. Preferably, if it's possible, like an end at 4, and that way folks don't, include my own staff, don't have to assume that they're here after 4 per se, and I don't have a problem myself, because I'm here for meeting all the time. But I just, in fairness, I prefer if it's at all possible to, either do it in an hour or perhaps consider it as it should be, if it's an hour and a half, it could be a 2:30 start or something, so we're not. Just so that we're not like creating unnecessarily,
I think that's more than fair. I don't know where we started with 3 to 4:30. I would have a hard time figuring out how to get everything in at a monthly meeting in an hour.
Great.
I
Understand,
really
understand.
We
doing my best.
struggle every
Yeah.
meeting to get in even
I mean,
before
yeah.
4:30.
Yeah,
I mean,
so,
DPS
Thought
event
to-
point is 3 p.m., so it would be even nicer for them. And
yeah.
selfishly,
Yeah,
if I'm able to stay on the resiliency committee in the new year, I always have to leave early to go
Right.
to my volunteer
No,
event, so
that's fine with
Eat the
4.
pigs.
Would
Eat the pigs.
2:30 to 4 work
I got
for,
somebody to cover.
for those online? Sarah,
2:30 to 4 instead of,
3 to 4:30.
okay.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
We'll just change it?
What was it, two to?
If that doesn't create issues. for
That's
other
very
people,
good.
that's your
Even
preference.
if that would cause an issue with wanting to.
One. And then
You
the ad hoc has to die with this council, and they'll hopefully pick up a new one, and they'll just have to find another council.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking, maybe it's even 2 because the meetings are scheduled.
Because it would only
Yeah,
be
that's a
November-
good,
only November
that's a good
15th.
question. Yeah, Connie, will the ad hoc continue?
Now, it has to die with this council. If nothing else, 3 of the members are not going to be on council next year, but all business has to die with each council unless it is particularly brought over.
Right.
But I would be shocked if there's not interest in the next council of picking up a new ad hoc. To take a real hard look at things, because there's only so much we're gonna be able to do. Our last council meeting is December 8th. So
Right.
our ability to, sort of wrap everything up and solve all the world's issues between now and December 8th are pretty limited, right? So at the very least, we can sort of look at things holistically, make prioritization recommendations. But what I don't think we're gonna be able to do is talk about, the actual timing, sort of, let's call it each quarter of each year, what should happen and all those sorts of things. And more importantly, how to fund these things and how the funding would work out. So, I would strongly argue that there will be a need for an ad hoc in the new year, but hopefully we'll be able to get a lot of the heavy lift done with the ad hoc in this council, or this iteration of the ad hoc, I guess we should say it. But myself, Counselor McCauley and Counselor Donahue are all, without question, not going to be on the council next year, and we're all on the ad hoc.
Yeah,
So that would only leave Counselor Cameron and Counselor Khan as, if they were to be reelected, which I think is very likely, but if they were to be reelected, they'd be the only 2 of the 5 members that would be able to continue on. So. we'll
is it
see.
worthwhile getting someone else interested at this point?
I think-
that I've talked to almost all the candidates and they're all expressing.
Yeah, I mean,
In the sub.
just today, let's call her counselor. Mary Delai was online today, Stephanie Nikitich and Sarah Hall were in the room. I think, I think there's a lot of interest in this.
Good.
And if nothing else, the joy of it all is that we have really shown a really bright light on all of this. And I think all of the counselors are now really understanding that there's a lot that needs to be looked at and tackled. So I'd be very, very, very surprised and very disappointed. And as a resident, I will jump up and down and scream if they don't come up with
And if
it.
nothing else, there'll be another CIP cycle starting up again. in the new
For
year,
sure.
so.
And we need water.
We need.
Yeah, and frankly,
to argue.
even the administration in the last mayor's update, and I have to say something in the paper, but certainly at the last mayor's update to the council, there was very positive feedback about the work that was being done in the ad hoc, and
Yeah,
discussion that almost seemed in certain terms around the dam. So I think even the administration is now taking on the dam as a priority. So that would certainly, it's not even in the CIP right now. So that would certainly suggest a new CIP. So I think it would be very beneficial to inform the next CIP process.
The dam.
The dam is not in the CIP in any iteration. It was last year's and it was
Yeah.
fully taken out this year.
But all indications are, it's.
I mean, it's arguable that it fell off the 5-year horizon and that's why it's not
Okay.
in the CIP, but it was not in the CIP.
Okay.
Right, okay.
All right. It's 4:30.
Okay, see you all tomorrow.
Any comment? Sorry, I'm always thinking.
No, I just said, sorry, so we'll see you tomorrow.
All right, sounds good. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Oh, I didn't confirm that too. So November next month, 2:30 to 4, and the ad hoc will have to,
2 to 3:30 or 2:30 to 4?
2:30 to 4. I mean, you guys can go on, but I just don't know anything else.
Oh, sorry, we would be in the room when you're, oh, okay.
It's not so much this room,
It's
it's
for
that the, half an hour.
We can go
Yeah, I
next
mean,
week.
Joe, Jane, yourself, who else is on resiliency? But, well, and myself, obviously, would the ad hoc runs till 3?
Yeah, why don't we just try to adjust for the following meeting then or something? I just want to avoid like a recurring basis.
Brought it up,
Yeah.
because I don't have any idea what
Yeah.
you're working on.
I'm feeding pigs, Jane, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. Thanks, and you guys are supposed to be like departing city hall, so.
Thanks, Sarah.